I discovered my fiancé and my sister in bed together during my engagement party, and my parents asked me to stay silent to protect her reputation. I am a tenured professor at a large northeastern university, 42F. Since I'm still processing what happened at my wedding, and to be honest, I need some perspective, I need to explain what happened. Let me first briefly explain the dynamics of my family. Lisa, 38F, my younger sister, has always been our parents' favorite. Lisa entered the media industry and became a local TV personality, while I spent years conducting research and writing articles for academic purposes. Our parents were always telling me how successful and gregarious Lisa was. The partiality was brutally evident when I was growing up. Our parents paid top bucks for Lisa to enroll in theatrical classes. I was told to use what we had when I required equipment for my science projects. All our lives, this trend persisted. The only person who really encouraged me to pursue my academic goals was my dad's mother, my Grandma Martha. "Elena, you have a gift in your mind," she would often tell me. "Don't allow someone to make you less bright." While my parents were occupied watching one of Lisa's TV segments, she joined me in celebrating the publication of my first research paper in a famous magazine. After putting a lot of effort into my job, I became one of the youngest female professors in my field. Even though it wasn't the life my parents had in mind, I created a life of which I was proud. Then, during an academic meeting, I met David, 44M. He was pleasant, intelligent, and seemed to have a unique understanding of me. After 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic when David proposed. How did my folks respond? "Well, at least you won't be alone with your books anymore." Even more telling was Lisa's response. With the same patronizing grin she had had since she was a young girl, she exclaimed, "At last!" I was concerned that you wouldn't meet someone who could cope with your intensity. The celebration of my engagement took place at my parents' home. Lisa insisted on assisting with the arrangements, but her idea of assistance mainly consisted of offering suggestions that were more in line with her preferences and criticizing my selections. She began to visit our home regularly, particularly during my work hours. I assumed she was simply acting in her typical domineering manner. In retrospect, there were a lot of warning signs that I decided to overlook. The way Lisa would enter a room and David's gaze would follow her, how she would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Lisa started coming to our neighborhood at the same time that David was spending more and more late nights at the lab. I recall the final instance of normal before things went awry. I was standing in the bedroom from my early years, examining old pictures hanging on the wall. Several glitzy photos of Lisa were hidden below my graduation photo. It seemed appropriate, a fitting illustration of my role inside the family. However, what followed took an unexpected turn at that point. Downstairs, the engagement celebration was in full force, and I became aware that I hadn't seen David in a while. I told myself he was probably just making a work call, so I went upstairs to look for him. I heard noises coming from my former bedroom. At that moment, my hand was motionless on the doorknob while I stood there for a while. I opened the door, even though I had a sneaking suspicion of what I would discover. David and Lisa were entangled on the bed where I grew up. I had spent many evenings studying for my PhD qualifications in the same bed. Lisa lacked even the grace to display embarrassment. "Oh, Elena, you should have known," she continued with that same condescending grin. "I always manage to achieve what I desire." The worst thing? Richard, 40M, a prosperous real estate developer, was Lisa's husband. While his wife ruined my engagement, he was gone on business, most likely closing another $1 million deal. I can't really recall what transpired next. In some way, my legs carried me down the hallway as I backed out of the room. David's voice carried that false sincerity I now knew all too well as he called after me. "Elena, hold on! It isn't what you believe." However, it was precisely what I had assumed. Before my parents caught me, I had already gone halfway down the steps. My expression must have told them everything. "Elena, sweetie, please don't make a scene," was my mother's initial statement. Consider your sister's union. The marriage of my sister. Not the broken engagement I had. Not my heart that was shattered. With a low, anxious voice, Dad joined in. You are aware of Richard's fidelity issues. A prenuptial agreement exists. She might lose everything. Elena, please consider the impact this would have on the family. The family. The same family that had prioritized Lisa's needs at all times. The same family that had disregarded my accomplishments, disparaged my decisions, and now demanded that I shield their golden kid from the repercussions of her own behavior. I passed them and entered the crowded gathering. When I walked in, the room fell silent. They must have noticed something in my face. David came up the stairs, buttoning his shirt hurriedly. Her flawless makeup was a little smudged. A few moments later, my voice was unusually steady as I continued. I apologize, but the engagement is off. I have to go, but please enjoy the food and beverages. Whispers and gasps began instantly. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shoes clicking quickly on the floor, but I continued. I went outside to my car after grabbing my keys. David was beckoning me, demanding an opportunity to clarify. Mom was crying for commitment to the family. Lisa watched from the doorway with the same arrogant smile, strangely mute. I packed up everything that belonged to David, including his priceless collection of rare scientific papers, books, and clothes, and drove directly home. Everything was placed in boxes. After renting a storage container and dropping off his items, I sent him the address and code to get entry. I then blocked all of his social media accounts, his email, and his phone number. My relatives began sending me messages right away, including guilt trips about how this would ruin Lisa's marriage, pleas to stay quiet about what had happened, and cautions about family loyalty. I also blocked their numbers. I came to a realization that evening while I was sitting by myself in my partially vacant flat. This was more than merely David's betrayal. This was the result of my family always picking Lisa over me. I had finally had enough of them choosing her happiness above mine. I inhaled deeply, made a glass of wine for myself, and started methodically clearing out their contact details from my phone. Every time I deleted something, I felt lighter. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. I threw myself into my work after that night. My haven was the university. I worked in the lab for several hours as my research team worked on a molecular biology breakthrough project. Despite noticing my change, my coworkers were gracious enough to keep their distance. Richard, the husband of Lisa, arrived at my workplace 3 weeks following the engagement celebration. His normally spotless suit was a little rumpled, and he appeared exhausted. Simply put, I need to know everything, he said. I was honest with him. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and listened in silence, his knuckles white. After I was done, he got up, fixed his tie, and remarked, I appreciate your candor. You have at least one family member who respects the truth. Then he walked away. My parents' efforts to get in touch with me grew more urgent. Voicemails about mending the family were left by Mom. Dad emailed about forgiving others and moving on. I was surprised that Lisa remained completely silent. My grandma later told me that Richard was divorcing Lisa and had left their home. My pillar of support throughout this period was my grandmother, Martha. She would sit with me, share stories about her personal challenges, and bring home-cooked meals. It was her opinion that the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I was resolved to turn my suffering into something useful, so I concentrated on drafting my next research article. One of the best journals in my profession approved the work. A professor at another university sent me a congratulatory email the day it was published. Michael, 45M, was his name, and he was an expert in research facility architecture. Michael's email was kind but professional. He remarked that he had read my earlier work and that our departments might collaborate. I was drawn to his writing style because it demonstrated more than simply professional etiquette. There was a sincere interest in the science. We started a conversation regarding the relationship between research efficiency and laboratory design. Once I replied, our emails grew longer and more personal over time. He talked about how his own family had helped him pursue his unusual career path of integrating scientific study with building. I really ran into him one day when I was buying coffee at the school cafe. I spilled my coffee all over his white shirt while he was at our university for a conference. As I assisted him in cleaning up, Michael grinned and commented, "Well, this is quite different from our email conversations." Rather than being upset, he asked if he could get me a coffee substitute. I paused. I had vowed to never date again after David, especially in academic settings. However, Michael was different in some way. Perhaps it was the way his eyelids wrinkled when he grinned, or the fact that he made no effort to impress me with his academic background. Observing my hesitancy, he laughed. "I promise I'm not a serial killer, just a clumsy architect who'd like to replace your coffee and maybe hear more about your latest research in person." "Just coffee," I firmly stated. For the first time in months, I felt at ease. As we sat and chatted, I realized David was not like Michael at all. When I told him about my work, he listened, really listened. With refreshing candor, he told tales of his own endeavors, triumphs, and setbacks. Before heading out to his next conference session, he asked if he might see me again. To my astonishment, I said yes. I sat in my office that night and gazed out over the campus. I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time. When the quad was covered in long shadows from the sinking sun, it wasn't just hope for a possible romance but also for the chance to create a life that was truly mine. Free from Lisa's persistent influence and my family's expectations. My mother texted me. "Lisa is having a hard time." My phone chimed. "Richard is acting irrationally. She requires her sister." I took a good look at the email before deleting it without replying. After burning certain bridges, some ought to remain burned. Rather, I opened my email and started composing a letter to Michael regarding a joint study project I was considering. I grinned as I typed, recalling how his eyes had brightened when we talked about the possibilities of multidisciplinary study. Perhaps, just maybe, this was the start of something genuine, something that was exclusively mine, unaffected by the toxic relationships of my past. Update 1. 6 months have passed since my previous post regarding Michael, the architect I actually ran into at the campus cafe. Many of you requested an update. That coffee date turned into something I never would have imagined. After our first meeting, we began discussing our joint study project over video calls. Over time, these business-related conversations turned into lengthy discussions about everything, from childhood dreams to beloved books. Michael found my passion for academics fascinating, in contrast to my family, who always considered it a weakness. There was no plan for our first actual date. We met to go over the specifics of the project while he was in town for another conference. We both realized we were hungry as the meeting ran late. Eventually, we found ourselves in a small Italian eatery near campus, where we chatted and shared a plate of pasta until the waiters began stacking chairs. I was particularly struck by how different he seemed from David. Michael did more than just skim my most recent research publication. When I mentioned it, he read it carefully and came back with insightful questions. With refreshing candor, he discussed his own professional struggles, such as a recent project that had gone over budget. When he inquired about my family, it was the true test. His genuine curiosity prompted me to open up despite my initial reluctance. I told him everything, about Lisa, my parents' favoritism, and yes, the disastrous engagement party. He just listened, without the usual awkward responses or attempts to defend familial ties. Then, he proved he truly understood by sharing his own experience with a competitive brother. Although our joint endeavor is progressing nicely, we have been careful to keep our personal and professional relationships separate. We mostly see each other on weekends since his department is in a different state. In fact, the distance has been beneficial, allowing us to build trust naturally. Last weekend, he asked me to meet his family. Considering my past, I was hesitant, but it was nothing like I had expected. His mother, Linda welcomed me immediately, sharing stories about Michael's early architectural projects and showing me his awkward childhood photos. Apparently, he once tried to rebuild their garage using his father's power tools. "We've heard about your research work," Linda said, pulling me aside. The moment felt surreal. "Michael is always praising your brilliance." It was said with genuine pride and interest, not comparison or jealousy. I forgot to mention that I recently received a job offer that would allow me to work closer to Michael's university. It's a prestigious position that would significantly boost my career. When I told him about it, his first reaction was, "That's incredible! Tell me about the research opportunities." I was thrilled by his response. He didn't ask what it meant for us, only about what it meant for me. I still haven't accepted the job. I'm hesitant to make significant life changes for a relationship after everything that happened with my family and David. However, knowing that Michael will support me no matter what, for the first time, I feel like I can make this decision based purely on what's best for my career. Last week, my grandmother Martha met him and gave her approval. "He sees you," she simply said. "Not who he wants you to be, but who you are." It has been quiet, to be honest. I haven't heard from Lisa or my parents in months. Sometimes, healing means letting go of those who don't value you, even if they are family. Update 2. My last update regarding Michael was 3 months ago. A lot has happened, and I want to share it with the group that helped me through my worst moments. I accepted the job at the university near Michael's. The transition was welcomed by my research team, and we have established a method for remote communication. The main reason the move has gone so smoothly is that I took my time and planned everything properly. Last weekend, the most significant change occurred. I was in Michael's kitchen, preparing dinner with him. Instead of the butter I expected, he was holding a small box when he turned back from the fridge. He didn't get down on one knee or give a long speech. "You know how we've been talking about combining lab design with research efficiency?" he said instead. "Well, I've also been considering merging our lives. What are your thoughts?" The ring was nothing like the gaudy one David had given me. It was exquisite and simple. Michael's next words truly touched me. "I know your work is important to you," he said. "The ring comes with a matching desk lamp for late-night research sessions." "Yes," I said, simultaneously crying and laughing. Michael's parents are hosting an engagement celebration for us. Linda has been incredibly kind, always checking in to make sure I'm comfortable with the plans. When I hesitated, Michael immediately offered to skip the party entirely. However, we're keeping it small, just close friends and family, because I don't want my past to dictate my future. Unexpectedly, Richard, Lisa's ex-husband, sent me an email. He said he's doing well with his new partner and even congratulated me. Now that his divorce is official, he seems genuinely happy. Hearing from him was strangely therapeutic. Martha, my grandmother, is overjoyed. She gave me a hug and muttered, "This one's a keeper," after I showed her the ring. She is correct. The small things, like how he turned one of his spare rooms into a makeshift home office for me with a whiteboard for research notes, are what show how much Michael cares. Somehow, most likely through extended family, my parents learned about the engagement. Mom left a voicemail stating that they would like to participate in the celebration and make amends. I have not answered. It's preferable to keep some doors closed. Update 3. My engagement update was 2 months ago, and I wish I could report that everything has gone well since then. I must convey the unexpected turn the wedding preparations have taken. At the lakefront home of Michael's family, we were organizing a small ceremony. Linda has been fantastic. She has always respected our wishes while assisting with arrangements. Only family members, close friends, and coworkers who truly support us were on the carefully picked guest list. Then I got an email yesterday that really chilled me. According to what my mother wrote, she and Dad decided to invite Lisa to the wedding. Their logic: she's your only sister, and family should be together on special days. I called Michael right away. "Whatever you want to do, I'm with you," he answered before I could even articulate my panic. "We have the day, not them." I was able to think clearly thanks to his cool backing. When I told my grandmother Martha, she became enraged. "After everything they've done," she said, "they have no right." I knew I had to deal with this on my own, but she offered to run interference. Before sending it, I wrote and revised my response multiple times. Mom and Dad. I made it very plain that I didn't want Lisa to attend my wedding. This cannot be discussed. You won't be accepted either if you're unable to respect this boundary. Elena. Their reaction was expected. It's about family togetherness. Mom called in tears. Dad wrote a long email about forgiving others and letting go. They even had some family members contact me on their behalf. Michael has had tremendous support from his parents during this time. Linda called to reassure me that only those invited would be allowed entry to the location due to security measures. Michael's brother, James, volunteered to deal with any unwelcome visitors directly. My research team's support was the most unexpected. They offered to surround me with a protective circle during the wedding after I brought up the matter in a lab meeting, looking agitated. My department director, Dr. Anderson, even offered to accompany me on my wedding day. Last night, Michael and I went over our wedding arrangements. If it made me feel safer, he proposed that we alter the location, the date, or even go on an elopement. However, I no longer wish to allow my family's behavior to dictate my decisions. Therefore, we're sticking to our original intentions while taking extra safety measures. Individual QR codes will be included in the invitations. Security will be in place at the location. And most importantly, our chosen family and real friends will be present to support us. Last weekend, my grandmother assisted me in choosing my wedding gown. She said something that made me cry as I stood in front of the mirror. "Dear, you're gleaming because you're at last free to be who you are. Not because of the outfit." Though I'm more resilient than I was previously, I'm still anxious about what Lisa might try. There is more to our wedding than just Michael and me becoming husband and wife. It's about choosing genuine love over poisonous familial relationships, happiness over drama, and tranquility over upheaval. Update 4. It took place. Lisa appeared at my wedding wearing an outfit that looked to be meant to attract attention, and was obviously pregnant. Despite all of our safety procedures and security measures, she had somehow entered through a service entrance. Thanks to our parents. Linda hurried in with a pale face when I was in the wedding room. "I'm very sorry, Elena. She was brought by them. Your mother made a fuss about not excluding an expectant woman when we attempted to stop them." She didn't have to complete the sentence. My parents had already put Lisa in the front row. But Michael sent his brother James to deal with the problem right away. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the same smug expression on her face that I had witnessed at my engagement party with David. I inhaled deeply and turned to face the mirror. My wrist was adorned with a handcrafted bracelet fashioned by my research team. The exquisite clothing grandmother Martha had assisted me in selecting. And Michael's first present to me, a lovely necklace including a little microscope pendant. "What do you want to do?" When I called Michael, he inquired. "They can still be taken out, or we can put it off. I support you, no matter what you decide." I realized then that I had allowed them to dictate my happiness all my life. "Not today. We're getting married," I stated confidently. "They can stay, but I'm done letting them write my story." The ceremony got underway. Dr. Anderson, the director of my department, escorted me down the aisle with pride. Everything else vanished when I saw Michael waiting for me with love and compassion in his eyes. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Everyone laughed when Michael pledged to constantly support my scientific endeavors, adding, "Even if it means converting more rooms into lab space." From peer reviews to late-night science talks, I vowed to be his partner in everything. The reception followed. I believed I was ready for anything, but I was surprised by what transpired next. Lisa pretended to be the maid of honor and got to her feet, holding a glass of champagne. She began by describing how she had saved me from making terrible mistakes and how she was always looking out for her big sister. Beneath the table, I felt Michael's fingers clasp mine. I noticed my research team stiffening up, poised to step in. Linda was getting up from her chair a little. However, for the first time in my life, I was able to fight my own fights without assistance. Calmly and professionally, as I would have addressed a lecture hall, I stood up, holding my own glass. "I think it's time for the bride to make a toast of her own," I replied. What came next? Well, that merits an update of its own. Let's simply say that speaking your truth with dignity might sometimes be the best form of retaliation rather than being silent. Underscore 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 underscore. Update 5. Here is what transpired when I made my toast after my previous update regarding Lisa attending my wedding. As I stood there, staring at my sister's arrogant face, I experienced an odd feeling of peace. I'd been lecturing academically for years, so I knew how to control a room. I started by saying, "For those who don't know me well, I'm a scientist. We work with truth and facts. So allow me to share some family-related truths." There was silence in the room. My sister, who was married at the time, was in bed with my then fiancé 3 years ago. My parents were more concerned with preserving Lisa's reputation than with my wounded heart when I found them at last. Lisa's smile wavered. Tom, her husband, whom she had brought as a sign of family unity, suddenly got to his feet. His voice was tight as he asked, "The baby, Lisa?" "Tom, is that why you've been avoiding the paternity test?" There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Lisa placed a protective hand over her growing tummy. I went on speaking steadily. "There has always been a trend in my family. Lisa's happiness comes first. They pleaded with me to remain silent after she ruined my first engagement. They helped her get in when she arrived here without permission. But today, I said, is about true family. The type that makes you stronger rather than weaker. My research group, who take pride in my accomplishments. Michael's family, who embraced me with unmatched warmth. My grandmother, who never failed to recognize me for who I am." Tom was the first to go. Lisa called his name and ran after him. My mother was crying as my parents followed. The room's atmosphere abruptly lightened when the door closed behind them. Then, my grandmother got up and held up her glass. In her own words, "To Elena and Michael. To truth, to real love, and to the family we choose." The remainder of the reception was excellent. Everyone relaxed without the burden of pretense. My study team had secretly practiced a surprise dance, which they performed. I found out the following morning that Tom had requested a paternity test and filed for divorce. For once, I didn't feel obligated to assist in picking up the pieces when Lisa's meticulously constructed world fell apart. Underscore 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 underscore. Update 6. A year has passed since my wedding and the amazing things that happened there. I wanted to give the community that helped me through everything one last update because so much has changed. Michael and I are expecting our first child, which is the major news. Initially, my first emotion upon seeing the positive test result was one of terror. It brought back memories of my own familial relationships. However, Michael's answer was ideal. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "This kid's going to have the best mom, A brilliant scientist who knows how to love unconditionally. The family of Michael and Linda has been amazing. Linda was thrilled about my latest research article as well as the baby when we told them. "This child is going to have such an amazing role model," she remarked, describing my work in the journal. I've heard tidbits of information regarding Lisa's situation from my grandmother, Martha. Tom's suspicion that the baby wasn't his was validated by the paternity test. She is currently trying to start again while living with our parents. The reality of being a single mother has replaced the opulent lifestyle in fancy clothing. I occasionally have a slight sense of sadness, not precisely guilt, for the way things turned out. Michael's statement, "Consequences aren't cruel, they're just truth and action," comes to mind. Next, I'm doing well with my research. Michael and I work together to build a new laboratory, and the university recently granted money for it. His inventive architecture and my research needs make for the ideal combination of our skills. Our work collaboration has only improved our friendship on a personal level. In my new lab, our baby will have a dedicated space, a secure, enclosed play area where they may be close to me as I work. Michael created it himself, adding all the safety features he could think of while still making it engaging for a child's growth. My circumstances haven't changed much, but I have. I no longer feel the need to compete for attention or prove myself. In our household, there is no hierarchy of love or success, only mutual understanding, support, and sincere joy in one another's accomplishments. Grandmother Martha, who is thrilled to be a great-grandmother, comes to visit frequently. She's already crocheting the baby little lab jackets, while entertaining us with tales of my own early science projects. Even now, my parents still make an effort to connect, generally through family. I'm not ready, but they want to be involved in their grandchild's life. Some wounds require real change rather than just time to heal. As I reflect on my path, I see that responsibility or blood relationships aren't the key to creating a meaningful family. It's about finding people that love you for who you are, celebrate your happiness, and encourage your aspirations. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. Although life isn't flawless, it is genuinely and delightfully mine. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I've always been the black sheep, overshadowed by my golden sister. They demanded I give my house to her, and even tried breaking in when I refused. I, 45F, work for one of the top IT corporations in Silicon Valley as a senior software engineer. I'm still trembling as I write this because of what just transpired with my family, but I need to tell my tale and get some outside viewpoint. My sister, Rachel, 38F, was the golden child in my family, and I have always been the odd one out. Rachel was everything I wasn't, with her flawless blonde hair and endearing nature. I was the reserved one who liked to play with my chemistry set rather than interacting with others. My parents never really made an effort to conceal their choice, and the difference between us was obvious from the start. I believe it's critical to recognize the pattern, therefore, allow me to take you back to my early years. I won my first school science competition when I was 8 years old. With orbital patterns included, I produced a functional model of the solar system. My teacher called my parents directly because she was so amazed. They should be proud, wouldn't they? False. Rachel had a dance recital, so they were unable to attend the award ceremony. "Mom, Dad, I won!" I exclaimed. Mom said, "But honey, Rachel needs us there. She gets nervous without us watching," as she arranged Rachel's hair. The pattern was established early on. Rachel's activities, no matter how insignificant, always took precedence over my accomplishments. I can still clearly recall my 10th birthday. For weeks, I had been hinting that I wanted a microscope. I ended up looking like a cupcake in a pretty pink frock instead. "But Mom, I hate dresses," I objected. She simply smiled and replied, "Nonsense. You look just like Rachel," which was a complete miss. The gap only grew further during middle and high school. While I lost myself in literature and experimental science, Rachel soared through school thanks to her charm and good looks. Because at least she's trying, they said. Her C+ grades were praised, but my consecutive A's were anticipated and barely noticed. When I reflect back on the science fair incident from my senior year, it still hurts. I had been refining my sustainable biofuels project for months. It was the state science fair, not just a school competition, so I was shocked to hear, "First place goes to Carla," when the winners were announced. I tried to express my joy during supper that night, but Mom interrupted me in the middle of my sentence. She murmured absently, "That's nice, dear." Then she turned to Rachel. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper when he said, "Princess, have you decided on your prom dress yet? We need to start looking soon." Rachel's participation ribbons from dance recitals were on display in the living room, while the trophy I had received sat collecting dust on a shelf. I think the event with the college admission letter was when I finally realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough for them. I was thrilled to receive my acceptance letter and full scholarship to a top tech university. I waved the note as I dashed into the living room. "Mom, Dad! I got in! Full ride and everything." Mom's eyes lifted from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Rachel, didn't you say you needed help picking out your prom dress?" And my moment of triumph was suddenly dismissed once more. My first taste of independence came in college, and it changed my life. All of a sudden, people recognized and even loved my passion for technology. I pushed myself into computer science with a zest that even shocked me. I was flourishing in my new setting, while Rachel struggled through community college, more interested in parties than schoolwork. "College is so hard," Rachel would complain when we occasionally spoke on the phone. "I don't know how you do it, Carla." I resisted the temptation to suggest that she may find it easier if she studied more and partied less. I simply shifted the topic and muttered some ambiguous encouragement instead. Rachel revealed to me during my sophomore year that she was engaged to her high school boyfriend, David, 42M. As you might assume, their wedding was perfect. Yes, the same guy who previously asked me, "Is science, like, really hard and stuff?" I stood there in a pink nightmare of a bridesmaid dress, forcing a smile for the pictures. Rachel was glowing, and David looked awkward in his tuxedo. During the reception, Mom whispered to me, "Isn't this perfect? This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter." I was hesitant to ask if she had ever dreamed of anything for me. After all, it was Rachel's day. As I focused on developing my IT career, Rachel's life appeared to be straight out of a script from our parents' fantasies. She revealed her first pregnancy within a year after getting married. 9 months later, Sophie, 8F, came, and 2 years later Nathan, 6M. In the meantime, I was advancing professionally. I worked numerous weekends and late nights as a junior developer at a tiny business in the beginning. I was one of the few workers retained when the company was bought out by a big tech corporation. From middle management to senior engineer, team lead, and finally senior software architect, I climbed my way up the corporate ladder. My family had the same reaction to every advancement and accomplishment. "That's nice, dear. Did we tell you Sophie got the lead in her school play? Oh, and just how lovely. Did you hear Nathan made the T-ball team?" As Rachel and David bought new automobiles and went on lavish vacations, I lived frugally, saving every bonus and stock option. Last year, I was ecstatic to finally find my dream home, a stunning 4-bedroom house in a fantastic neighborhood. It had finally paid off after 20 years of hard labor. During our subsequent phone conversation, I declared, "Mom, Dad, I bought a house." The person on the other end of the line paused. "A house?" Mom said slowly. "Again. All by yourself?" "Yes, all by myself," I replied, my enthusiasm somewhat waning. "It's a great investment." Mom stepped in and said, "But it's such a big house for one person. What will you do with all that space?" I'll enjoy it, Mom. It's mine. Well, she responded, clearly disapproving in her tone. I suppose if that's what you want. Oh. Did I tell you Sophie lost her first tooth yesterday? After I bought the house, the months that followed were hectic with work and getting settled. I immersed myself in the decor, making every space a representation of who I am. In order to focus on personal projects, I made the main bedroom my haven, the second bedroom my home office, the third my library, and the fourth my home laboratory. However, I began to observe a change in the dynamics of my family during this period. My parents stopped calling as often as they used to. There was a strange tension in their voices when they did call. Then Mom called last week. Carla, dear, she said in a sickly sweet voice, we're having a family dinner next Sunday. You'll be there, won't you? We need to talk about something important. We need to talk frequently indicates that trouble is about to break out in my family. Nevertheless, nothing could have prepared me for that dinner's events. David kept clearing his throat anxiously while Rachel's children ran about screaming. Carla, Dad remarked, clearing his throat after dinner, we need to talk about your house. My hackles stood up. What about my house? Well, you see, sweetie, he added, both of them looking at Mom. We've been thinking. That big house of yours, it's really too much for just one person. Dad, we've been over this. I like my house. It's mine. Mom jumped right in. What your father is trying to say is that Rachel and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting cramped. Rachel's sudden interest in her plate caught my attention. I asked, but I had a dreadful suspicion that I already knew where this was going. And we think, Mom said in a condescending tone, that since you're childless and single, you ought to give your house to Rachel and her family. My expectation was that someone would shout, Gotcha! And let me know it was all a prank. But all I saw were faces full of anticipation. You can't be serious, I said at last. Now, Carla, Mom replied condescendingly, don't be selfish. Rachel needs the space more than you do. Selfish? I asked again, raising my voice. How is it selfish to want to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for myself? Dad added, it's your sisterly duty to help in times of need. I looked at Rachel. And what do you have to say about this? She eventually looked into my eyes and shrugged. Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. And it's not like you're using all those rooms anyway. What I was hearing was unbelievable, as if I were the irrational one for not giving up my house. My own family was pleading with me to do so. No, I firmly responded as I got to my feet. Absolutely not. I'm not giving up my house. I heard Dad say, think about it, Carla. Family should come first. As I picked up my coat and made my way to the door, the repercussions began. It has been a nightmare in the days since that terrible family supper. First, I ignored my parents' and Rachel's incessant calls and messages. Then the flying monkeys struck. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my home and the decisions I had made in life. It was Aunt Beatrice who called first. Your poor sister needs a home for her children, and you're living all alone in that big house. Shame on you! She interrupted me when I attempted to clarify that it was my home, purchased with my own funds. In my day, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like misers. The real kicker came next. Well, if you're not going to use all that space, you should at least consider donating your eggs. It's not like you're using them anyway. I almost dropped the phone because I was so stunned. I was about to reply when she continued primly. You're not getting any younger, you know. Tick-tock. Edna, my great-aunt, left a voicemail. Carla, dear, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you need that big house. Your sister has a family. What do you need 4 bedrooms for? Your work? Uncle Robert texted a series of increasingly audacious messages. The calls and messages continued to arrive. Every relative appeared to have a different take on my life decisions and how I ought to manage my possessions to prevent getting more texts. When I get home, I've started staying late at work. My phone is always buzzing with guilt trips and new judgments. Even though I've blocked a number of them, they continue to originate from fresh ones. But something feels different tonight. Call it paranoia or intuition, but I can't shake the uneasy sense that my family might try something out of the ordinary. Especially concerning was Rachel's final message. "You'll see reason eventually, one way or another." Reddit, I need your advice. Am I being selfish, really? Should I risk being totally shunned by my family by standing my ground, or should I just give in to keep the peace? Above all, should I be concerned about Rachel's most recent message? First update. Since I first posted about my family attempting to coerce me into selling my house, 2 weeks have gone by. I am utterly disturbed by what transpired yesterday morning, and I must share this. Amazing news. I've spent the last few days working from home due to a severe cold. Nothing major, just enough to satisfy my boss's demand that I take a break. I was on a video conference with my team at around 10 o'clock in the morning when I heard a sound that chilled me to the bone, someone attempting to open my front door. I initially believed I was dreaming, but then I heard the familiar jingle of keys and recognizable murmurs. After muting my phone and sneaking over to the front window, I was astounded by what I saw. My parents, Rachel, and David were on my porch, and there was a moving truck parked in my driveway. I caught them red-handed. As I threw open the door, when they helped me move in last year, Mom was actually holding a set of keys. They must have made copies. "Carla!" Mom exclaimed, almost dropping the keys in the process. We thought you'd be at work." I couldn't help but ask incredulously. "So you decided to break into my house?" Rachel moved forward with righteous wrath, but at least Dad had the grace to appear ashamed. "You're being completely unreasonable about this, Carla. We thought if we just took the initiative." More details that infuriated me were revealed at that point. Furniture had already filled half of the moving truck. Actually, they were going to move Rachel's family in while I was absent, possibly at work. Rachel added, "We were just going to wait for you to come home." As though that would help. I yelled, "No, you weren't," and pointed to the truck. "You were planning to move in behind my back while I was gone." At that moment, I saw movement on the other side of the roadway. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, had her phone in her hand and was observing from her window. She mouthed, "Police," after catching my attention. I gave a grateful nod. I said, "I've called the police," in a trembling but forceful voice. "You wouldn't," sneered my dad. "Your own family?" The sirens sounded as if at the exact moment when a police car arrived. My family's faces lost their color. 2 policemen came to observe the scene. One questioned suspiciously, glancing at the moving vehicle, "Is there a problem here?" "Yes, officer," I responded, attempting to maintain a calm tone. "These people were attempting to break into my home." "Carla!" exclaimed my mom. "How could you?" My family was examined by the officers. "Is this true?" The officer held up a hand as my father began to stutter forth an explanation. It was both exciting and upsetting what happened next. "Sir, trying to enter a property without the owner's permission is a serious offense. I'm going to need to see some ID from everyone." The officers took pictures of the moving vehicle, recorded the duplicate keys, and obtained statements. They clarified that although they would not make any arrests this time, they would record the incident and charge anyone who tried to do this again. Rachel glanced around as they were being let off my land. "You'll regret this, Carla. You'll end up old and alone." I sat down on my couch, trembling, after everyone had gone. However, the day was far from done. An hour or so later, I got a call from a surprising person, Aunt Margaret, Maggie, my mother's sister. "Carla," she gently began. I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why they're really after your house. I was astonished by what she told me. She apparently works at the bank where my family conducts business, and she has observed some quite alarming trends. In addition to living over their means with fancy automobiles and lavish holidays, Rachel and David are heavily indebted due to David's severe gambling addiction. For years, he has been surreptitiously depleting their accounts. However, things worsened a few years ago. My parents lost a lot of money in a pyramid scheme. They were going to move in with Rachel and David after they acquired my house. But they'd been barely making ends meet. Maggie clarified. I confronted your mother about it. That's why she stopped talking to me last year. I've been watching this train wreck happen in slow motion, and I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I can now see why their desire to acquire my house was so intense. All of them are in danger of going bankrupt. Not only did they desire my house, but they also required it as a source of income. The remainder of the day has been devoted to installing security cameras, changing my locks, and taking notes on everything, just in case. I'm also considering obtaining a restraining order in order to have hard proof of everything. And Maggie has recommended that we engage a private investigator. She believes that there may be more to this narrative than what we now understand. Living in a horrible soap drama is how I feel. How did this become my life? Once we have additional information from the investigator, I'll provide another update. I feel secure in my home for the time being, but I can't help but wonder what other secrets my family may be keeping. I appreciate all of your help and guidance. I was even more in need of those security cameras than I had initially believed. Second update. I'm in complete awe of our private investigator Diana's findings. I had underestimated the depth of this rabbit hole. Yesterday, Diana met with Aunt Maggie and me at a peaceful cafe that is not close to the places my family usually visits. The attempted home invasion appeared to be only the beginning of what she disclosed. David has been living two separate lives. Diana not only verified his addiction to gambling, but she also discovered a 2-year-long affair with my cousin Jenny. While Rachel and my parents were struggling financially, he was spending money on weekend vacations, upscale hotels, and pricey presents. Diana replied, "Look at these credit card statements," which included frequent expenses at the Grand Hotel, Tiffany's jewelry purchases, and weekend getaways to Las Vegas. They were all from the same places and matched Jenny's social media posts. This is where it becomes even more twisted. Though the funds David spent on his extravagant affair, my parents contributed a large amount for what they believed to be a business investment. They had been lending him money. He was using it to finance his second life instead. Diana also discovered proof that David opened a different Cayman Islands bank account by pretending it was for a high-yield investment opportunity. He has been embezzling money from my parents' retirement account. Actually, he has been using it to keep up his affair with Jenny and pay off his gambling losses. Diana stated, "Your parents' retirement account has been nearly drained," as she passed over another paperwork. "They've been living on credit cards, believing David's promises that a big return on investment is just around the corner." Diana's discovery of emails between David and Jenny about their scheme to use my property as collateral for a loan in order to hide their tracks before Rachel found out was the most startling revelation. Diana clarified, "They intended to obtain a second mortgage on your home. The paperwork was already being prepared. They just needed to get physical possession of the property first. That's why they attempted the break-in. They weren't just trying to move Rachel and the kids in. They were racing against time to secure the house before their whole financial house of cards collapsed." And Maggie, who had been studying the papers in silence, interrupted. "There's more," she added in a strained voice. "Look at these transfer dates. They align perfectly with your Uncle Bob's business's supposed expansion dates." I was slammed by the implication like a truck. Jenny's father, Uncle Bob, had been unwittingly using his business loans to David to finance his daughter's romance. I've made the decision to call a family gathering. My parents, Rachel, David, Uncle Bob, Aunt Clara, Jenny, and all the other family members who have been bugging me about my house will be present. They are coming to my house, the house they attempted to steal, at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I will present all of this evidence with bank statements, hotel receipts, pictures, and email correspondence. Diana has put together a thorough presentation of her research. And Maggie will be present to verify the bank account information. To make sure that things don't go out of control, I've even recruited security. You need to be prepared, Diana cautioned me. When cornered, people like this tend to lash out. They might try to blame you for investigating or accuse you of destroying the family. I'm tired of being the family doormat, even though I know she's right. Everything is different tomorrow. I feel bad for bringing this to everyone's attention, especially Uncle Bob and Rachel. Both of them are also sufferers of this. However, I can't find it in my heart to be nice about this. After years of being treated like a second-class family member, and being forced to give up my house to cover for their falsehoods, the security cameras have been set up. The evidence is arranged. My family will discover tomorrow that the quiet, dependable sister they have been taking for granted has finally had enough. After the meeting, I'll provide another update. I have a feeling it will be explosive. I'm currently here in my home office, going over these records and trying to comprehend how the family that made me feel self-centered for keeping my house was actually going to use it to hide their own network of deceit and lies. After the heated family gathering, the dust has finally settled, but my life has taken a totally unexpected turn. I want to explain how everything transpired and the current situation. The altercation proceeded as Diana had anticipated. The room exploded when I showed them the proof of David's financial schemes and affair with Jenny. The security personnel had to restrain Uncle Bob after he lunged at David. Jenny attempted to leave the room, but Aunt Maggie barred the door, and Rachel broke down in tears. The best part was when I showed my ace card, which was recordings of David and Jenny talking about how they were going to use my house as collateral for loans. My parents' faces became pale when they recognized the full scope of their alleged investment opportunity. In the aftermath, I made a firm move. I started by informing the ethics committee of David's business about his financial malfeasance. He was put on administrative leave pending investigation. Within 24 hours, he was fired at the conclusion of the week for breaking company finance regulations. Additionally, his professional licenses were revoked. I then assisted Uncle Bob in starting legal action to recoup his business loan using Diana's proof. David had misrepresented the entire investment strategy, according to the damning paperwork. Although the matter was resolved out of court, David's remaining possessions were taken away. My parents had to come to terms with themselves after I reported the questionable activity. The bank opened an investigation into their accounts. All 5 of them are now jammed into a tiny rented apartment, just as they had intended to do in my house, after being forced to sell their home to pay off their debts. After learning of David's complete betrayal, Rachel filed for divorce. She attempted to apologize to me, saying she was unaware of his plans for my property, but considering that she actively participated in the attempted break-in, I don't think it's credible. In all of this, my connection with Alex, whom I met at my neighborhood rock climbing gym, has been the most surprising development. He travels the world taking pictures of endangered species for half of his time as a wildlife photographer. In contrast to my family, he recognized and appreciated my independence and job right away. We developed a relationship organically and without coercion. We support each other's goals while enjoying our independence, and he has a prosperous career and a home of his own. He set up his photography gear in my home lab last week, joking that the lighting was ideal for both my circuit board documenting and his wildlife photos. I now consider Aunt Maggie to be my real family. Every week, we get together for supper and talk about everything from her crazy childhood memories to investing techniques. She shocked me last month when she disclosed that she had changed her will to name me as heir. She responded to my protest by saying, "You're the daughter I never had, Carla, the one who truly understands the value of hard work and integrity." Most of the remainder of the family has split up into different camps. It seems that Jenny and David made an effort to keep dating, but as soon as the money stopped coming in, their romance ended. She has relocated to a different location, and he has accepted a position at a Nevada used car dealership, which is very different from his previous executive one. Rachel and my parents still make an effort to get in touch with me on occasion, mainly when they need money. I blocked their phone numbers and told my attorney to take care of any correspondence. Their most recent attempt was especially pitiful. Rachel left a crying message stating that she and the children were going to be evicted. Aunt Maggie then informed me that they had more than enough money for rent. They were merely attempting to mislead me emotionally once more. My career has seen the most satisfying transformation. I've been able to give my career my whole attention without the continual drain of family conflict. My firm just promoted me to Chief Technology Officer, something I might not have accomplished if I were still subjected to their emotional manipulation and incessant demands. I now consider my house to be my home. The area they once attempted to take has been transformed into a sanctuary by me. Modern equipment has been added to the home lab, and one of the bedrooms has been converted into a library and photography studio where Alex and I work on our individual projects. Originally put up for protection, the security cameras now primarily record wildlife and my garden in order to capture the family of foxes that have taken up residence beneath my deck. Alex has even installed a few specialist cameras. The fact that my house, which my relatives said was too big for one person, is now more loving and purposeful than they could have ever dreamed is a lovely irony. I've discovered that family is about respect, understanding, and support for one another rather than blood ties or duties. I've learned what true family looks like from Aunt Maggie, Alex, and my close friends. They love me for who I am rather than what they believe I should be. They support my decisions rather than criticize them, and they celebrate my accomplishments rather than downplaying them. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. I was able to resist being abused by my biological family thanks to your counsel and support. And to anyone experiencing similar familial pressure, keep in mind that despite expectations from family, you have the right to defend what you fought so hard to achieve. Despite what some people may think, my narrative isn't about retaliation. It's about establishing a life full of true love and respect and at last escaping poisonous family relationships. There are instances when the family you choose is superior to the one you were born into. I recognize the irony that my family lost everything in the end when they attempted to steal my house, but I gained a real family and a level of happiness I never imagined was possible. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.